a short lecture number 2. Here, in this lecture, we are going to discuss again the history part of political science. Now, in previous lecture, we discussed just foreign invaders and how governing system develop in India. I am not saying actually word develop, we can say propagated, because in earlier days also very good governing system was there in India. Say every time we have to when we are discussing about some area, we have to discuss in the way that time factor is important. Say for example, if you are discussing something in the time of Chandragupta Maurya, then obviously at that time communication system, transport system, etc., they were not that developed as when it was term of British rule over India. During British rule, a very good communication system was developed, and that's why they were able to administer more effectively rather than earlier days. So the techniques are also different. So we are going to discuss these things in detail. Now what happened? That India was ruled by their own people, as well as to the certain parts of India, outsiders, as we discussed in previous lecture, they were also arrived. Then onwards, there was to certain extent, I am not saying 100%, but to the maximum extent, it was rule of Muslim rulers. So why I am separating out these rulers from other invaders? The thing is that in other invaders, we are talking only about their tribal name. Say for example, Shuk or Scythian people, Kushan or Yuchi people, like that. But in case of Muslim invaders, they were from different nations and they ruled different part of India. Let me clarify. For example, Khilji dynasty, they claim that they were Turk. Then Lodhi dynasty, they claim that they were Afghans. They were ruling over India, certain territory, not 100%, but larger portion of India, either direct under their rule or indirectly they are under rule. Now, Siddhi, in Maharashtra there is a fort called as Janjira, very small fort, and the Siddhi of Janjira, they were ruling with very small province. If you consider the map of India, then I have to show only a dot on that, like that. But their administration, Siddhi means people from Abyssinia, that is in Africa. Today it is called as Ethiopia. At that time it was called as Habsan. So that is the region. So we are having different rulers ruling from different territories of world. They arrived in India. For example, there was a ruler named as Barid Shah. Qasim Berid is name of founder of this kingdom. He was Georgian person. That is Bahamani kingdom's 5 pieces, as we have to discuss. In that, he was there. Then Qutub Shah, he was from Persia, Iran. So like that, and obviously Mughals, they were hybrid, particularly from Mongolia to Turkestan. Mixing was there, and still mixing continued when they entered in India also. So like that, various races ruled over, but under name of religion, the religion was only one, and therefore they enforced certain laws like Sharia and whatever the ruling system that was found almost similar with little bit of change. Say for example, Sher Shah Shuri's rule. Sher Shah Suri was Pathan, Afghan, and his rule was something different because he introduced Mansabdari system, which was later on continued by Akbar, that means by Mughals. So like that, minor changes, or in case of currency also, it is said that today what rupaya we are using, that is introduced by Sher Shah Suri, whereas that is original Sanskrit word is raupya, corrupted as rupaya. Then onwards, it was period of Renaissance in particular part of India, that was in Maharashtra. And Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj, obviously with great efforts of his father, Shahaji Raje. So he was able to start propagate new indigenous kingdom. Say in that period, almost Vijayanagar's empire was lost, and then onwards, Indian rulers were not having direct rule. Say indirectly they were there. For example, Mirza Raja Jai Singh, he was also having title as Raja. So they were under emperorship of Mughals. So whereas Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj established his own, that is indigenous kingdom, we started here. No doubt the kingdom was ruling over very small region, but it was comparatively bigger than region of Siddhi. But in last phase is expanded in South India also. Then onwards, Mughal Emperor Aurangzeb tried to defeat, but due to great efforts of Maratha warriors, he was not able to defeat them. Then rebellions broke out almost all parts of India, and ultimately Aurangzeb or Mughal dynasty came to end. It was, we can say, not dead, but almost just nominal ruler like that. And then onwards, Maratha dynasty or Maratha kingdom developed. Maratha empire developed. Say first it was a kingdom. Nearly 6 districts of Maharashtra were under their control initially, but in later on it expanded and almost 2/3 of India was under their control. Now here massive change was there. Initially all power was there in hands of king, or rather I should say after that emperor Chhatrapati Shahu Maharaj. But he trusted in his prime minister to great extent. That is Balaji Vishwanath Bhatt. He was appointed as prime minister. In Urdu, that prime minister post is called as Peshwa, and therefore they are called as Peshwa. So his son Bajirao, the great person, his original name is Visaji, but he was also considered as Peshwa because of his eligibility. After his death, his son Balaji Bajirao, or that is called as Nana Sahib, he was appointed as Peshwa. And then onwards, Chhatrapati Shahu Maharaj decided that there should not be any struggle or quarrel between Maratha nobles for this prime ministership. And then he said that prime ministership will be hereditary in that Peshwa dynasty only. Henceforth, Peshwas become dominant, council become dominant, and emperor become nominal. So after Chhatrapati Shahu, those who were there on that throne, because they were adopted one, and therefore they were just we can say nominal, whereas real power vested in hands of prime minister. Is it good thing or bad thing? I am not at all communicating, but similar things happened in England at that time. So let us go from Maharashtra to straightway England. If you check out clearly in case of England, you will find that for them council become more important. Now this importance was there, but council, that is council of ministers, that become more important, and they got some power. We are having that charter that is called as Magna, supposed to be Charta, but we are saying it is Magna Carta. But in latter phase, kingship again dominated England. And then, say various things are there, they were also ruled by outsiders and all that, but I am not going into that detail. But ultimate thing is that council was able to rule more properly, and they appointed a king. Say here is also similar thing. Council is appointing out king, and his name is King George I. Just for a little bit, England was ruled by certain people. They are called as Saxon people. We don't know origin of Saxon people, but from somewhere they arrived in Germany. They occupied German territory, and then onwards they entered in England, and they occupied major portion of England. King Arthur was there, who defeated them from North England. But ultimately, after death of King Arthur, again these Saxon people ruled over England, and they started calling themselves, those who are settled in England, they started calling them as Anglo-Saxon. Whereas in Germany also, that means Deutschland is original name, in their princely states also, there was a kingdom. They are also Saxony, called as Saxony. They are also Saxons. And now, English king was imported from Germany. That is from Hanover or Hanover. I don't know if he is silent or not, because in certain book it is mentioned. Because English is not proper language, or a script that what we are using, Roman script is also not that proper. And again, these people are having different pronunciation of different words. So for example, that German car, something Volkswagen, but spelling starts with V. So like that something is there. So when we used to study in this way that Hanover, V is silent. But in new books it is written as Vanover in Devanagari script. So whether it is Hanover or Hanover, but he was imported from that name of king is King George I. Now surprisingly, King George I was not aware of English language. German and English, they are not having much of the difference. Little bit, yeah, differences are always there. But like that, what is the similarity between Gujarati language and Hindi language? So like that we can say there was some difference in German and English. But still he was not aware of English language. And then his prime minister, named as Walpole, he started taking initiative. He was translating out the material, whatever happening in parliament, he was translating out for king. And ultimately king decided that I will stay in the palace only, and Walpole should report whatever happening in the parliament. Because King George I was not much engaged in England. He was much engaged in whatever happening in his Hanover territory. And therefore, he decided to stay in the palace, and ultimately the prime minister got prime position in the parliament, and he used to report whatever is happening throughout the day. He used to report it to to king, that is King George I, because King George I was not aware of English, whereas this Walpole was able to speak English as well as German. And then slowly king become apart, king become nominal, and council was getting more power in the hand. So we can say, if you are studying out this way, then during that period particularly, worldwide these things happening to certain extent, answer is yes. Even if you look at Qutub Shahi kingdom, then in Qutub Shahi, that is ruling from Golconda, so there also similar things happen, that their council was more dominating than the king. In Adil Shahi kingdom also, at that time similar things happened, because Adil Shah, whatever that was appointed, and their council members were able to control that. In Mughal kingdom also almost similar thing happened, that emperor become nominal and their ministers were more prominent than that. So like that, worldwide these things were happening. We can say in many parts of world these things were happening. Now this is the phase where council is getting more importance than emperor. Emperor is just getting nominal. Now in India, Britishers established their factories. Keep in mind, they are not using word as go down, they are using word as factory. So here Britishers established factories. Britishers started developing their empire slowly. So East India Company was established somewhere in 1600 AD. But since initially they were only traders, but in latter phase they decided to take charge of India. The factory was ruled by a person that is called as governor. So they set up the factory. The factory was at Surat, then it was at Mumbai, then it was at Rajapur, Chennai, at that time it was called as Madras, then Kolkata, at that time it was called as Calcutta. So like that, at various places, the factories were set up by Britishers. Each factory was having own governor. But what happened at that time, Britishers were not able to come to India directly from England. If you are visualizing this map, because as you are studying for competitive examination, you must able to visualize the map. Suez Canal was not yet developed. So they used to make circle around Cape of Good Hope, that is South Africa, and arriving. So yet industrial revolution is not started, and so ships were purely basis on that sailing in the wind direction only, and therefore the journey was too long. Nearly 6 months journey was there from England to India in those days, and so for communication purpose, the full authority was vested in hands of governor. But in latter phase, Britishers decided that some centralized system should be there. And after the Battle of Plassey, Britishers got comparatively good foothold over Kolkata, that is Calcutta, and they developed the empire starting from Bengal. And therefore, we can say at that time, they decided that Governor of Bengal should be called as Governor General. So this way there was change in the post from Governor to Governor General. Yet entire rule was in hands of company. British East India Company was there, and British East India Company was claiming that we are there for trade only, and for that trade India is not that secure. To make it secure, we are carrying out this all activity, and therefore no doubt there was no direct rule of Britain over India. It is indirect rule because ultimately company was British only. Now this is the period somewhere around 1760 where Abdali, that is Emperor of Afghanistan, he was trying to occupy North India on call of Najib-ud-Dawla from Rohilkhand, Pathan. So he was called there to rule over North India. Maratha power was engaged in war with Abdali. During that period, there was Battle of Plassey. Then onwards, there was Battle of Buxar. Maratha power was not able to pay much attention towards Bengal at that time. And as a result, Britishers got good time to control over Bengal territory. At that time, there was proxy war in America, because French versus Britain war was there. French were defeated, and Britain asked them to surrender all colonies in America, particularly North America. And this way, French were forced to take out from America. So French supported British colonies. The people, those who are staying in colony, they were British. It is game of proxy war, and with that, America got freedom from Britain. But keep in mind, they are not Native Americans. They are British. Those who are staying in America, they got freedom from British, those who are staying in Britain. This incident took place around 1774. Britain suffered a loss. Terrible loss was there of Britain. And therefore, Britishers decided that similar thing should not happen in India. Because in India, their power was just developing. 1757 onwards. So during 1770s, they were not in the mindset that this growing power ultimately should go in the hands of somebody else. It should be controlled by British Parliament. And for that purpose, they impose various laws over British East India Company. Again, thing was that no doubt British East India Company got control over Bengal territory. So Bengal was a very rich territory. Actually, in history, we have discussed that if any emperor want to sustain his empire, particularly economically stable in India, then Bengal and Gujarat, these two territories must be there in hands, because these two territories they were developed in trade at that time, and therefore various trades, particularly rich trade, and they should be controlled by central government, then India will flourish, or their empire in India will flourish. Now Bengal was now in hands of British East India Company, but still British East India Company was suffering losses. And then by taking advantage of these losses, Britishers means British Parliament decided to impose certain laws over company. We are going to discuss these laws in next lecture and how Indian administrative system developed under British rule. So we are going to discuss this in next lecture.